Hello, everyone. Welcome to the newest episode of the Data Roll podcast. Today, we'll be talking about how data is transforming affiliate marketing in iGaming, but not only. And I'm joined by Michael Filletti, a co-founder of Rowty. Michael, hello and welcome. And over to you for a short intro.
Hi, Stan. Good to be on here. Thank you for having me. So I'm Michael. I'm the co-founder of Rowty. Basically, for who doesn't know, Rowty is a BI tool for affiliates, a business intelligence tool, where essentially what we do is we help affiliates grow their revenue and optimize their business using data.
And could you tell me, please, because this is what you're doing today, but I know that data is in your veins for already a couple of years. How did you actually end up in this situation? What's the background? How did data spark your interest? I'm really curious.
Yeah, so my background, as you mentioned, is data. So yeah, I've been working in data for my whole career, pretty much. So I graduated from maths and statistics. I did a bachelor's in maths and stats quite a few years ago now. And basically, once I finished my degree, I got a job as a junior data analyst in like a software company. Spent 2 years there. Then, unfortunately, the company shut down. And then I got my first gig, let's say, in affiliation. So I got a job in affiliation. I was very excited, like, to learn about data and affiliation. I was very curious, and I was shocked to see that, data and affiliation is very scarce and very hard to get. And that's where the journey begins, let's say, between me, data, and affiliation. Yeah, I spent 2 years working at a big affiliate at the time, where I learned a lot about data and affiliation, especially about the problems that there are. Yeah, and after that, I took a bit of a break, let's say full-time from affiliation, but I was doing some side work. And yeah, I've been on Rowty now since the end of 2022, where yeah, we've been growing the product, the business, and basically just helping affiliates become more data-driven, helping them solve their data problems. And yeah, it's been good to see the growth, I think, of the topic as well in affiliation.
Super. And you have raised one point which already triggers the next question that I want to ask you, because you mentioned that the data, whenever you joined the affiliation space, you see that the data is scarce. So what exactly do you mean? What are the different touch points, the data that you can gather in the context of the affiliation, and what would the data stack look like for an affiliate?
Okay, so I think when it comes to understanding the data behind, let's say, affiliation, first we need to understand the business of affiliation. So as you would know, an affiliate is essentially a middleman, right? So you have the player or the user, the affiliate is in the middle, and he's going to send the user to the advertiser, in our case, to a brand. So let's say you have a website, let's call it StanleySlots.com, for example, and you promote a bunch of, give you a business idea, no? You're promoting 10 brands on there, and players come to your website and they go to whatever brand. From your side, from a touch point perspective, you have the player land on your website. Okay, they'll go through a few pages, maybe read some content, whatever. But as soon as they click on the link, which takes them to a brand, you've lost them. So they're off of your system. Obviously, they will get tagged and they'll show up in the system of the operator. But in terms of control and actual touch points that you have, they're extremely, extremely minimal. And the shame is that the touch points that you do have, I wouldn't say the least important, but let's say it's not the revenue, So it's like very, very top of funnel stuff. So this makes it, obviously, already it makes things a bit difficult for affiliates because they don't have control over the data. Now, aside from that, obviously, the partners of affiliates, so the brands will offer them affiliate programs. They'll send them CSV files in some cases, unfortunately, but they will give them some sort of data. The problem is that all of these different brands, a lot of them work on very different softwares. One works on software A, the other one works on software B, the other one built their own one, the other one sends you CSVs. So if you have 10 brands, okay, you maybe can manage to kind of, but imagine now you're working with 1,000 brands. It's extremely, extremely difficult. That's basically where the challenge comes in. And that's, I think, the biggest difficulty of affiliation and data. This is the natural challenge.
And would you say that there are some types of data that you would say that are truly useful, and on the other hand, there's some of them that are overestimated?
It's that's a good question. I would say that, like, let's say, without directly answering the question, I think that ultimately the most important is to give context to the data. Okay, so for example, say your revenue at the end of the month. Obviously, that's super important, right? Because it's the lifeblood of a business. But if I tell you, okay, Stan, this month you made 50K. I mean, okay, and what, as in, and last month you made 5K, for example, and you'll tell me, wow, man, my business is growing, 10x a month. I mean, it's great. But then I tell you, yes, but actually 48K came from one player who just lost big and he decided to stop playing, for example, whatever. It's this level of context which really matters for decision in terms of decision making. And that's what really, I think, rather than focusing, okay, on which metrics matter, it's all about context. I think that having that additional context, which is not easy to get, again, for affiliates, that's really the key. And I like to split them in, like, you have the what data, which is, okay, what was my revenue this month? And then you have the why data, which, okay, why was my revenue at that level? And that's, I think, the difference in the metrics that matter and the metrics that don't matter, or rather the data that matters.
And also, you mentioned that an affiliate entity needs to, in order to analyze, needs to collect and to make some sense out of those hundreds or thousands of different exports. But would you say that from what you see, do the affiliates actually use this insight in a efficient way, or rather put much emphasis on a gut feeling?
That's a good question. I think there's a mix. Look, I think there are affiliates, the more time passes, I think they're getting smarter and smarter. And you can already start to see the affiliates who are smarter and the ones who are, let's say, less smart. So I know of quite a few affiliates who use these insights. I believe, thankfully, quite a few of our clients use these insights as well. And it's obviously incredibly valuable for them. But that being said, there still are a lot of affiliates who not only do they not use they just don't have the insights, and they don't know that they can get the insights. And I think that's the problem. I was speaking to a competitor of ours, and we were both saying, the same thing. We see something similar where we see, okay, you have these group of affiliates who know that you can solve the problem and whatever, and you can cater to them, but you have so many affiliates who just don't know that it's even possible to have this sort of solution. And I'm sure that, again, if you deliver the insights to them, they will use them, because ultimately they're all in it to make money. That's the target at the end of the day.
So sometimes it seemed like a topic of awareness. And one more thing that you have mentioned was about the affiliation software and the usage of the different tools for gathering the information about the acquisition channels and the link generation. So how does it impact the tracking, knowing that from an affiliate perspective, your operators use X different softwares, each of them having their own, or maybe there's a subset of 5 or 6 that repeat, but still everything is in according to different formats.
Yeah, so the different softwares are, unfortunately, it's just part of the game. There's so many different softwares out there. Obviously, there are your major ones, the ones that everyone knows, but there are then also some that are like, I don't know, you have a brand, let's call it, I'll use you again, Stanny Casino, and Stanny Casino decides to create their own affiliate program, So you say, okay, I'll just build the software myself. And that obviously adds a layer of complexity. In terms of the softwares, at the end of the day, it's part of the industry. So it's not something like you're going to solve where you're going to say, okay, guys, all of you merge together, let's have one and let's make our lives easier. Obviously, it's never going to happen. So we have to just live with it. I think it's about the softwares having certain basic requirements that need to be offered. For example, for me, I think that all softwares should have an API rather than needing tools like ours or whatever tool out there to crawl it, because obviously crawling, it breaks, it's ugly, you don't want to do it. But unfortunately, it's one of the most common ways of pulling data. Yeah, which is nuts. You want to have the availability of postbacks, for example, so that you get in that real time, or at least close to real time data, and click level reports so that you can delve deeper into the data, so that you get a certain granularity. Because again, if I tell you, okay, Stan, you made 5K with me this month. Okay, but and what, how can I improve our partnership if that's all you give me? So I think it's about the softwares having certain basic requirements of things that they offer. And then from there, we can start working on things. But again, ideally, they all offer the same reports. So it's like easy and you just download all the reports, merge them together and you sort it. But it's a project that was attempted some years ago. We started speaking again about it now, but it's a bit of a tough one. So for me, right now, I just want to have like the sheer basics of like, okay, guys, postback, API, click level reports, so that at least the affiliate has the option of getting this data in.
So to live up to a certain standard, which is then you're able to reproduce and merge them to sell it.
So that as an affiliate, you have, again, like, at least you know that you can delve down into a certain granularity, you know, just that at least everything at its base is similar. Now, unfortunately, again, it's a bit of a difficult topic because there are so many different softwares out there. Some I think that are very good, some are maybe that are less good, let's say. So it's very, very tricky, and it's one of the main challenges that affiliates have to deal with. But again, it's not going to change. So we just need to learn how to work with them.
Yeah, right. And speaking of the different challenges, I know that also you've been working not only on the affiliate side, but for some time also on the operator side. And I'm curious to have your opinion. What is actually harder? Where do you see the biggest challenges in between both when it comes to data analytics? And when we speak, for example, for affiliate data, what is particularly challenging? We mentioned this dispersion, that is complete discrepancies between the various formats. And what else would you name that you need to face?
So, I mean, I worked, like we spoke, I worked with an operator, but for a very, very short period. So just for like 3 months, and it was 10 years ago now. So quite a long time ago. So I was doing really basic work. So it was a really good experience, to be fair. But I would say what I'd be curious actually to know from your side, maybe, and to compare like the challenges that we both face. Obviously, we're both data people. Again, in terms of affiliation, the challenges that we get are at its basis that the data is very scattered, can be unreliable, it changes, there's little control that you have. You have a lot of nuances, you know? So what I mean is that, like, guys, account 123 gives us the deposits amount, but doesn't give us net revenue. Account 124 gives us net revenue, but not deposit. And you have these like little issues here and there, which make the BI challenge, let's say, alive in affiliation, because the data is alive, because it's constantly changing. The way that you pull it, it changes. And that, for me, I think it's very, very hard to see how much revenue you're making in affiliation. Like, that's the level, you know, whereas for you guys, obviously on an operator, and I mean, you know how much money you're making relatively easily, right? So it's like, they're just different types of hurdles. But I'd be curious to know, for example, from your end, what the challenges are.
Yeah, many of those challenges are similar. Let's say that the discrepancy in terms of number of data sources, yes, from an operator perspective, you don't have hundreds. Rather, you will have a few crucial ones. For one of the operators in Switzerland, we were integrating 27 different systems, but out of which you had 3 to 4 that I would call major, beyond the PAM as well, of course, as the one most important. But beside this, these were rather, I would call them services rather than data sources. But from a BI perspective, you would still call them a data source. And still, it's a much lower amount than what you would have in the affiliation. And yes, like you mentioned, it's easy to calculate the revenue, but getting it clean across for a company that works across multiple markets or across multiple brands, then it's altogether a different story. What I would say it's the most interesting, and also what sparks passion when you work with this kind of data, you can see that there's really people behind. You can watch their behavior. They have a name, they have a favorite theme, a playing pattern. But this also boils down to the fact that you need to use that data responsibly. You can tailor the campaigns, but not going too far in it, not to feel intrusive.
Yeah.
Also, when I think about that, these inconsistencies between the different systems, this is the typical challenge, I would believe, in all situations, all industries, all company sizes. Just the bigger the company size, the bigger differences will be. And I can name you a few examples. One of the interesting examples was when working for one operator, we discovered that the number of FTDs and new depositors in the PAM and in the software for affiliation was different by 15%. But then the question would be, the natural next question for the operator would be, why would I pay a CPA on the 15% of players that probably do not exist, right?
Oh dear. Oh dear. I guess that's always like that would be a common challenge, right? Managing partnerships. It's something that we've seen as well, where you have lately, like in affiliation, there's been a big rise of networks. And the network is basically, let's say you have a big affiliate and small affiliates are using their deal and kind of piggybacking off that. It's very common. And now that's really interesting because you have an affiliate who's kind of acting like an operator in a way, because obviously they need to report to the sub affiliate and whatnot. And that's when things they're tough, it's tough to deal with because you're managing partnerships and now you're managing, now it's a bit more sensitive. You have to make sure that your reporting is spot on. Obviously, you still want it to be spot on. But like you mentioned, the 15%, internally, you want to make sure that you're 100% accurate. But then when you have partnerships and you're actually paying people out an extra 15%, that's a bit more tricky. So that's actually something that we have in common. What I'm curious about actually, and it's something that we have a bit, and that I've seen as well, even when at my time at affiliate companies before, was getting like buy-in from the company, like people within the company. Do you struggle to get buy-in? Is it a bit more tough? Because in affiliation, it can be quite tough because since the data is alive, it's not a simple solution, It's like sometimes you need to be a bit more complex. Many times it's not even your fault because data changes, or maybe, I don't know, you crawl a program and all of a sudden the crawler broke, because that's what crawlers do. And it's not your fault. It's just things change, How is the buy-in when you have when it comes to operators?
I think it's a very nice topic. I thought of one more story just before I answer yours, because it might be worth mentioning, because it's based on a conversation I recently heard from one of my friends who works on the game provider side. A few months ago, we have developed a small engine to calculate budgeted invoices for the game providers from an operator perspective. They're all based on what you see in the PAM, but the same should be reflected in the RGS. Because at the end of the day, the data is transferred. So the player clicks the game tile, the game loads, and then all the transactions are on the RGS side, and then recorded in the PAM associated to the player that has a first name and the last name and so on, an identifier. And funnily enough, you would assume that there's no way this could be different because it's the data that is exchanged between the two parties.
Yeah.
There is no way that this could somewhere disappear on the way, right?
Yes.
Unless the reality kicks in. And so this operator they have been asking out loud the question, are we right when we are paying the invoices to the game providers without making a check? They were suspecting that perhaps they might be overpaying.
Okay.
And when they started validating, thanks to the engine we developed for them, they started realizing that sometimes there was 10 to 20% overcharge on the invoices. It was not systematic. Let's say that, but when you have 20 game providers, one or two usually were having too big of invoices submitting. Yeah, and then the engine proved useful because then the operator could go back to the game provider and say, hey, based on the contract we agreed, this should be 11K and not 15K. Let's take a look. Let's break it down.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the contract, in theory, it's simple. It's just a percentage of the GGR, be it bonus included or then deducted, or be it only on the real wagers. Depends on the construction of the contract. So it could be both ways. So in theory, it's very simple. And somehow there were such huge discrepancies that justified the need to build specific SQL procedures to find out. And then I spoke to one of my friends who works for a game provider, and he's internally responsible for a BI initiative, and for he's acting as a head of data.
Okay.
And he said that when he started inquiring the teams, how do they calculate the invoice amounts, he told me after, well, to me, it seems that it's random.
Wow.
They just place some numbers and they just send it to the operators and they pay, they never ask.
Oh my
And, when you hear such a thing from someone who wants to put some order and to put it in an orderly fashion, then I kind of start understanding that on both sides. On one side, the operator was asking, hey, do we really need it? Maybe we should start checking. When they start checking, hey, there really is some discrepancies, even that it's, let's say, 8% on top of, or 10% on top of a GGR. So it should be simple. And meanwhile, on the game provider, hey, so what is our activity? I don't know. Let's just put 12K.
Jesus Christ.
That I'm slightly oversimplifying for the
Yes,
discussion.
of
Of
course.
there were some subtleties to it related. But at the end of the day, we could break it down to such a thing, and then you start understanding that, hey, there's a real value behind it, because on one side you can kind of prove your point
Absolutely.
that, hey, I'm calculating in the right way, and on the other, hey, my game providers are doing their job in the right way as well.
Absolutely. I think it's actually a great story and a great kind of like a green flag for data where, as in with this engine, you had like substantial amounts of money saved, as in it was for sure worth it, especially if on one deal you're saving like 20%. So it's per month. So that's very, it's a nice story and a nice green flag, I think, for data. It's good to get buy-in actually, which is what I mentioned before.
Mm-hmm. But for the buy-in, that's another story, because I see, and I'm curious, what's your perspective? What I see is resistance. So sometimes I feel that from an operator perspective, we seem to be working on something in secrecy, the internal teams, because it's our secret sauce. At the end of the day, the companies are really similar between each other. They all need to bring in players. They all need to showcase the games. It will be the game providers. It won't be necessarily different game providers than your other operators, other competitors will have. It's highly likely these are going to be 100% the same.
Yes.
And at the same time, methods could be replicated. And this kind of secrecy, and it's not the right way to understand confidentiality. It's not how it works.
Yes.
But it makes sometimes the industry be a little bit backwards for adoption, and there's seems to be much groundwork. Things happen bottom up. You start building a team, for example, for data. This is great, but there's no structure, and it evolves just like a natural organ. Like organically, it did evolve. It's bigger, it's more robust, but is it solid? Does it actually have the right structure to sustain the growth? No, unless somebody comes in as an expert. But usually when you start off and you build up a new practice, you won't be hiring the expert, because the expert will be bored. You get a junior or a mid who will do the job, but who will not ask the market price for an expert. So you have a junior that starts working and developing all those reports. Then you end up with 120 reports. Probably half of them are not used, and half of them will be duplicated, let's say. Then you're paying to maintain those 120 instead of having only a handful, let's say, because it didn't get built with structure, but it was just organically. And what's your take on it? How do you see things?
So in terms of the buy-in, let's say, as in I've had that experience a few times where I was kind of, let's say, the first data person at a company, and it can be really tough. I think it depends. I think there are a few like external factors as well that come into play. So, for example, let's say you're working at a company that's a startup, and they're kind of they're generating data from their app, for example, whatever. I'm making this up, by the way, it didn't happen to me, but let's say you have this app, and anyways, you as the data person, you start giving them reports, you start showing them, okay, guys, we have 100 users daily, they do this, and this, blah, blah. And I think when it comes to certain industries, especially, let's say all of a sudden you have this decision that you need to make, where the data guys is telling me that we should do A, and their gut feeling tells you B. And your guys, the data says A, as in, I don't know, a bunch of these users are usually the sense that I got, and when let's say when I was in a similar situation, the smaller the company is, the more they tend to rely on gut instinct. That's the kind of experience that I had, let's say, where I don't know, maybe the founder is kind of like more like, look, man, like this is what I think, we're gonna do this. And there are many founders like that, I think. And I think that's a bit of a tough situation where you just need to almost say, okay, man, the data that they need at this point is maybe just reporting, you know? So they just need their reports to come in. They want to see how much money they're making. Maybe they want to report to their partners, blah, blah, blah. So the role of an analyst there, unfortunately, can be a bit limited because, I mean, we don't love telling people, guys, we made 5K yesterday, you know? Like, I mean, man, it's not, that's not exciting. What's exciting is me telling you, man, this is how you make 10K tomorrow. So in certain situations, unfortunately, it's a bit different. But what I experienced was to get buy-in is that once you get one thing right, once the data tells you, look, guys, you have this, then boom, then it like, then you get a lot more interest. But it takes time. It takes time. You need the right conditions. You also need the right people. But once you open the door, then they blast it down, you know, then everyone's coming to you and asking you all these questions. And I did have it one time at a job that I had where it was very, very slow on the pickup. Like most of my reports were being ignored. And I remember I had this trend for the end of the month, and they were telling me like, man, it's wrong. You know, it's like, there's no way that this is gonna be the revenue that we make. And I'm like, okay, but as in, I mean, I was also still new, and I'm just like, man, this is, I mean, it's just a simple linear regression, you know, to calculate. This is like, and at the end of the month, I was like maybe 2% off. And as soon as that happened, then we started so many projects, and that's when the buy-in kind of happened, and that's when the trust was built. So it's it depends on a lot of things, I think, buy-in, and it depends as well, yes, on the stage of the company, the people that you have. So it's not an easy thing, but I think that as a data person, it's really important to focus on what the business needs, because ultimately a business is all about making money. So you have to understand how you're going to help them make money. That's ultimately how to get buy-in, essentially.
Yeah, and now coming back to what you mentioned quite in the beginning, that the data needs a specific context. Sometimes it could be that the data someone presents might be perceived under a specific context, and especially when it comes to smaller companies, it might happen that we have people in the management that have this context, that data people might be missing from the business perspective.
Yes.
But on the other hand, you bring the data, you have the interpretation, and then you could face the denialism. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, as well. Yes, of course. This is definitely, I mean, ultimately being a data analyst, I think there's a bit of a social element, you know, to it as well, where you need to understand the way that people think. I mean, if you give us numbers, I mean, we can play with them kind of to do any sort of story, you know? I mean, I think there's a saying that if you torture numbers enough, they'll tell you anything, which is true, you know? I mean, we can twist them, play with them, but you have to understand the people that you're delivering it to. I mean, even when I would deal, for example, with if I'd compare like a CEO or an owner to like a head of retention, for example, even the way that you present numbers is totally different. Like the head of retention, for example, would be very detail oriented and would want like little steps. Then if you give that to the CEO, to be honest, he's not going to read it. You know, he'll read like maybe the first thing, and then just ignore it. So there's also, yes, that's a human aspect to it, which is not easy, you know. It's not particularly easy, especially because we are typically logical people, you know. It's like it's not like emotional intelligence is very common in analysts as well.
Yeah, and when I think about buy-in, then I see even bigger challenge for the predictive analytics, because then you have the statistical background to myself as well. So we have seen during reading different papers, etc., that back when we were learning the different methods, we saw the proof how they works, and that's how we know that there's mathematical reasoning behind, and we can believe that the results are right. But how to go now and to defend in front of the CEO, let's say, when you show a linear regression and then you say, okay, but it's the ordinary least squares, best R square statistics, and that's how you know that this is the most suitable with the best fit. And they will never understand a single word out of it because it doesn't make sense when you start speaking in a plain language. So how to move that buy-in, if you get it once for the what and how answers that you mentioned before, towards the predictive analytics. And because that's specifically when you'll be able to tell, hey, there's this marketing campaign. 20% of its success is due to factor A,
Yes.
50% due to factor B, and so on and so forth, because you will be able to dissect these different effects.
Yes.
And you will be placing some causality instead of coexistence, but the methods are much more advanced. And what do you think
Yes.
about this?
Yeah, I think it's wow, it's a really really good topic. So yeah, of course, if I tell someone, guys, we have I don't know, a confidence interval of like 95%, and I mean, again, they're not gonna know what I'm talking about, So there is an element of, I think you still have to find a way, I think, to explain to them, look, guys, this is what's going on. Even if, I mean, again, you don't need to stay going into OLS or whatever, or like summations or all this stuff. I think it's just about saying, look, guys, this is a statistical method. And then again, I mean, depending on what you use, you can explain it. I remember I had one guy who explained, when I was actually an intern previously, I think he explained some statistical method, and he explained it like super simply. And it was better than how some of my lecturers explained it. And I was like, wow, man, you're amazing. And I started to realize there, already like the value of simplifying things as much as possible. So you have to simplify it as much as you can. But I think you do, to a certain degree, then need to explain it, at least, if maybe not to the CEO, to people maybe who are a bit closer in level to you, or maybe people who are a bit more mathematical as well. But it is tricky, it's not like, I mean, sometimes predictive models fail. I mean, they're not fortune tellers. They fail, and then you're obviously the one. The CEO comes to you and tells you, "Man, you told me that we're going to make 250K, and we made 100K only. Like, what? Your model is shit." Because they will tell you that. I mean, and then you have to kind of explain to them what happens. It's and you're obviously, the buy-in gets a hit. It's difficult to deal with, and it's not an easy situation where there's like an easy solution. But I think it's about trust. I think it's about taking a responsibility as well and saying, look, man, the data sometimes it fails, as in it's not like we have a guarantee. It's I'm not sure I have a proper solution for it, but it happens.
Especially that's when I like to say that the data science has the science word in it, because sometimes it feels like alchemy. You're mixing some different mixtures and you're making experiments. 2 times you'll fail, 1 time you realize the gains, and then you just need to have enough room for making those errors, because you won't get to the perfect model before you fail with the first 2 ones.
Absolutely.
And maybe you start with 60% fit, 70% fit, you end up with a 90% fit and 90% precision of the prediction, and then this is an awesome score. But you need to start off with the one that actually performs rather average before tweak, and you find out the right recipe. And so I have one last question for you for today.
Yes.
I'm curious on your thoughts about the magical word shaving. So
oh wow,
this how becoming data-driven could protect either party from unethical behavior on the other side, because of exploiting the fact that someone has the data while the others do not. How we could work towards better solutions and a better environment while being data-driven?
Well, shaving is the word in affiliation, I would say, one of the big words. Where like when you speak to affiliates and you mention it to them, they're like, oh yes, I'm being shaved. I mean, I've seen it happen, as in I've seen reports where like on one day you have 5 FTDs and then it goes down to 3 FTDs. And we had done not really a project, but we had done a mini exercise as well with a client of ours, where we provided also them with the reports, and we told them, look, man, yesterday it was 5, today it's 3, and you can go to the operator with it. The operator had an excuse, let's say, for it. Don't know if it was an excuse or it was actually real, but was a bit strange, let's say. Yeah, I think, I mean, again, thankfully, that's something which I think it's a problem that we need to be involved with, in the sense that we need to help affiliates with it, to know about it. If we can solve it, I don't think so, speaking as me from Rowty, but I think we can definitely help affiliates be aware of it. And when you're aware of it, that's already very valuable. Why? Because you can say, okay, this operator is telling me that instead of 10 FTDs, I have 6, and I made 1K from them. Okay, then I made 1K from 6 FTDs instead of 10. So each FTD is more valuable. So then you're pushing for a better deal. On the other hand, if you've got this constant like shaving, which you see happening, you can say, okay, man, like you're not trustworthy. I don't trust you. I need to move on to another operator. So that's how I view it from the affiliate side. But I know that then there's operators who have their own views, about shaving and affiliates that try to cheat the system, etc. So it's a really, really complex topic that I just want to, from our end, we just want to offer, let's say, a solution to make affiliates know more or like be more aware of it, where we help a few of them. But yeah, in terms of the solution for it, I don't know if there even is one, at least not from what I know so far.
There's been an interesting initiative which is run by Tipico for certifying game providers who offer on the German market only to within legal operators for their games. And then I was thinking, imagine that we have such a situation that you could hand certificates of trusted partner towards operators or affiliates that on either side are working in a consistent way, and that at the end of the day there's no situations that somebody complained against them for a mismatch on the data side. That might be an interesting.
It's a nice idea as well, to say, like, for example, okay, let's say I go to an operator, I go to Stanley Casinos again, and I tell him, look, man, you're I had 5 FTDs yesterday. Today I have 3. You're shaving, and I show you, and you actually show me proof. Like, look, man, these guys were found to be fraudulent. Here's the proof of them. Blah blah blah. I'm like, okay, that's fair then. I mean, I don't know if I'll take it so well, but let's say it's it's like a nice. I think it's a nice way to increase this trust, because the trust between affiliates and operators, I think between some is okay, but between some others is not very good. And there's always this element from the operator to the affiliate and from the affiliate to the operator of like, how are you going to try to screw me over, and trust is really, really, really important in a partnership, because, ultimately both parties are making a lot of money. Both parties want to make more money, but you have to have an element of trust in a partnership, because otherwise it becomes very difficult.
So more data, more trust.
Exactly. That's for sure. That's definitely 100%.
That's a very good conclusion, which will be the end of our today's story. Thanks a lot, Michael, for this interview. Very interesting one.
Pleasure. Yes, absolutely.
So, guys, we'll be wrapping up this episode today with Michael Filletti from Rauti. We discussed various topics across affiliate marketing, but not only, and how to leverage data in these worlds. Time to sign off for now. So, thank you a lot. And remember, keep rolling with the data.